You're listening in on an animated discussion about Batman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic from the cinematropolis.com. And today we're talking about Season 2, Episode 12, If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich? Joshua, riddle me this. Who likes film scores and is joining us on today's podcast?
I have no idea.
I've got an answer for you. We're joined today by Alexandra Bohannon, who film score aficionado, expert, podcaster extraordinaire. Alexandra Bohannon also enjoys her some Batman the Animated Series. Alex, welcome to the show.
Well, hello there, fam.
Oh, she just stepped out from behind the curtain.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
so surprised by this riddle.
The big reveal. Hi.
It's shocking.
Welcome.
Hi, great. And thank you so much. I mean, spoiler alert, Caleb and I lived together in a house in which we were roommates. And so I've just been bothering him until you guys let me in on this really solid bro fest you got going on.
There's a lot of broing out that happens, yes.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to be talking this Riddler origins story with you all today.
Well, I know how much you like video game scores as well.
Yes,
and this is kind of related.
I know. Like, I actually was surprised that I mean, to be honest, I watched this show a lot as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But besides like Mad Love and stuff like that, like the big ones that everyone talks about, like I don't have like a lot of lodged memories.
Mm-hmm.
I remember more clearly like Batman Beyond and of course Teen Titans, but that's like way later. So, so I was really excited and a little bit surprised. I'm like, oh, look at this, some like really old school gaming on PC.
Yeah, right? The Riddler's a game developer. I'd forgotten about that. No joke.
Yeah, it's not really a thing that comes back. But I kind of appreciate the effort of updating his origin. Or not quite to the level that Mr. Freeze got one for the first time, but he didn't ever really have a great one. And so an attempt to kind of update that in a very early 90s way.
And gaming in the early 90s. And it does come back up a little bit. There's another episode called What is Reality that is actually even more steeped in the gaming stuff.
That's true. I don't know that they actually mentioned that he was a game developer in that one. Like, I think it's just...
Well, he just happens to use the video game as a tool.
He used the video game. So maybe that's more of the internal slow burn continuity that this show does. So slow burn, I didn't even think about it until now. But you're right.
Cool.
You're right.
Yeah. I actually, when watching this, basically for the first time, if I've seen it, it's been too long and it's been dumped out of my brain. But basically, I just assumed when watching it that it was going to be like board game developing or tabletop game developing, and it's like, no, whenever Robin's futzing around on the computer with his 1D very like Commodore 64 or whatever kind of graphics, and it's just like, it's pretty good.
Oh, man, so much good stuff to talk about. But before we do, Alexandra, so obviously you're a fan of the BTAS and the animated, the DCAU.
Sorry, I've just never heard someone say the BTAS before, and I was just enjoying that.
It's like an old, it's like my grandma trying to be hip. The BTAS?
Yeah.
What else do you do? You podcast a lot around the interwebs, correct?
I do. So I am podcasting currently on the Cinematic Schematic, as aforementioned. We do film scores on there with my segment called Soundtrack, so you can always find that at thecinematropolis.com. I'm sure Caleb has talked about this, just the presence and existence of thecinematropolis.com. But I also, people ask me to guest on their shows, so I've guested on Good Trash. I used to be a host over there, Good Trash Media, and then I also, Okie Geek sometimes, This With You Guys, and so I just kind of float around and people ask me to talk to them about stuff, and I really enjoy it. So I'm really thankful to be here for you guys today.
Well, we always love having you and hearing what you have to say about pretty much anything.
It's true. No, I have had you in mind. We have discussed you as a guest host more than once.
Oh, golly gee.
And actually, I'm going to segue into the show proper.
Oh, yes,
because we usually kind of ham-fistedly handle the music part of the title card.
Oh, yeah.
But I would really like to hear your opinion, because I think, just visually, this title card is pretty good. Like, it's not mind-blowing.
No, it's very simple.
It's pretty simple, but it gets the point across.
Right.
The maze is the same maze or pretty close to the same maze as the one that Robin is playing in the game. Very simple. Riddler green on black background is evocative. They dodge the question mark for his first appearance.
Right.
So you didn't necessarily know what you were, getting into.
And this was the first, at the time of airing, this was the first Riddler episode.
Yes,
so it wasn't obvious. It wasn't immediately obvious what this was going to be about.
Sure.
I will say that the title is terrible. Like, the title of this episode is legitimately awful.
It's not great. It's not even a riddle. God.
Right? Missed opportunity. Well, and then like the fact that apparently in this universe he loves puns. They didn't give us a puntastic title.
We'll get to. I'm not pleased.
I mean,
with the
it's
puns.
fine that we don't go just like really blatant. Now riddle me this or whatever. But it's just like reading this title. If you didn't have like the little synopsis on Amazon under it, it's like, what's this about?
I might have guessed from the title card because I am eyes deep in Batman stuff where I'd be like, oh, green on black. That's definitely
Riddler.
And there is a question mark.
Question mark in the middle with the, But
not, not the big sort of whimsical purple question mark.
I mean, one thing I always have in my brain whenever I think of Riddler is, Jim Carrey, very manic, very purple, very green, Is his hair red in the movie?
He dyes his hair red.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. So it's just like all that heightened electric color.
Yeah.
And this is very tame, I feel, for Riddler.
Well, because here's the thing. The Jim Carrey version of the character is pretty extra. And I know he's based off of, and Joshua's probably got more experience with the character from 66.
Yeah, he's definitely doing that.
But generally speaking, the Riddler I know, both in all the comics I have read and on this universe, is definitely like way more chill, way more like Moriarty-esque mastermind.
Yeah. That's a
he's
good
not
comparison.
he's not the really crazy, like over the top.
For which I am thankful, and I would like to talk about that later because in a nutshell, I feel in different iterations of Batman in which I have consumed, I feel like in universes in which the Riddler and the Joker exist, there's too much bleed between the two of them.
I agree.
Especially when you amp up the Riddler to 11 and the Joker's already at 11, and you're just like, okay, the only difference is this guy likes puns and riddles.
I agree 100% about that weird bleed over between Joker and Riddler. And I think that you can see people playing with that depending on their depiction of the Riddler in various media, right? So because this is the first time the Riddler's been on Batman the Animated Series, let me hit the historical high points.
Okay.
Let's do
All right,
it.
yes.
So originally appearing in Detective Comics 140 in 1948, his creators are, not surprising, Bill Finger and Dick Sprang. Bill Finger is basically the writer who's responsible for everything you think of as really cool Batman stuff, and Bob Kane is an awful hack. Dick Sprang. Oh no, that's
hot takes, ladies and gentlemen. Coming at you
that's
fast.
the coldest take.
I can't wait for this think piece coming soon to a film Twitter near you.
It's been written a million times. I don't even have to do it. I can just go dig up links. Yeah, so Bill Finger brings everything that you would think of as cool about Batman to Batman.
Cool.
To the earliest bits. Dick Sprang is the reason that, to some extent, the look of Batman 66 happens. It's also why you get like giant typewriters and stuff like that is kind of part of the Batman look. Dick Sprang's approach to Batman and Robin is very much the inspiration for the look of my personal favorite Batman cartoon, The Brave and the Bold. So, and in fact, this show winding up in a giant maze that is part of a game could be a nod towards Dick Sprang, who again would have them like run across giant billboards of actual typewriters, or would fight the Music Meister in a giant trombone or something. Like this happened all the time. So I wonder if this, fake maze becoming a real maze is maybe a nod towards the Dick Sprang roots. It also may not be. It's otherwise impossible to know because the styles are so different. Famously, the Riddler was played on Batman 66 by Frank Gorshin. He is the only Batman 66 villain to win an Emmy for his portrayal. So
that's some stuff. Okay,
that's an accomplishment.
On the spot here, real quick. Sorry about this. Emmy, like, how many did Batman 66 did Adam West win an Emmy?
I don't
Daytime
believe
TV?
anybody else won an Emmy. There might have been some writing Emmys for a couple episodes, but I really don't think so. By and large, Batman 66 was well regarded in the pop culture, but didn't necessarily get a lot of nods. You had a lot of critics and things sort of not getting the joke, which I know will come as a shock.
Who would have thunk it?
I know. So
Those critics are soulless monsters. They don't
Critics
get no
being
humor.
butthurt and not fun.
And they hate fun things.
I am not taking this bait. I'm just saying it's not shocking to say that maybe the various academies
No,
did
sure.
not get the joke.
But let's be real.
66.
Let's be real. As a film critic, with a lot of experience in film criticism, and I think as film goers, Alexandra and I can speak to the testament as cinephiles that the Academy in general does not take genre things. It's getting a lot better as of recent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But generally, historically, has not taken anything genre seriously at all, hardly. So the fact that a villainous character in a Batman TV show wins an Emmy is crazy. I mean, that's like if what's his name, who played the Penguin in Gotham, got an Emmy or something like that. Like that doesn't happen.
At the time, Frank Gorshin is a well-regarded and much beloved comedian. And so he is one of, I don't want to say the only, but one of the few people who showed up perfectly paired with the character that they were guest starring as, because this is I actually think he does a better Joker shtick to some extent. That he's not really
66 Riddler.
His 66 Riddler is in some ways what you would consider a better Joker than what Cesar Romero was doing as the Joker.
Well, it just seemed like my vibe from all the and this is the same thing with Jim Carrey's Joker. And I hope I'm not jumping too far ahead, but even from 66 Joker it was like it was playing the Joker, but with the gimmick of riddles. You know what I mean? Like it was still the same, like laughing at everything maniacally, being ridiculously over the top, but with the different gimmick. Whereas I feel like the later incarnations of the Riddler that we know are definitely significantly different.
No, they very much reacted, not necessarily to Frank Gorshin, but to this. There needs to be a difference between these two villains.
Right.
These two high-profile villains need to have more difference. With Gorshin, he was on 66 well before the Joker showed up. So he was kind of having, literally in the first two episodes, our Riddler episodes, the original first two.
Oh, wow.
Both to record and to air. So he's really having to figure it out sort of on the fly. And he does this thing that makes sense that really does make sense for the Riddler, but then it winds up sort of getting into the Joker's territory.
Yeah, and that's one thing as a more casual Bat fan than you all are. I've never fully understood the inclusion of the Riddler when the Joker is a thing.
Oh man, they're so different. The characters are
really do wind up being really
just
different.
Considering like how popular culture
Right.
is derivative and how like a more casual person would understand as like seeing the iteration that we see in this episode that we're about to talk about, I really appreciate that.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, this is a distinct character, which
Right.
I've never gotten from any other depiction.
And to be fair, the
utterly
Riddler
fair.
has only been, and I think this goes back to the fact, and this is why big screen superheroes are very important, and their portrayals are very important, and with supervillains as well. Like
They
the Riddler,
stick.
exactly. The Riddler has only been portrayed on the big screen by Jim Carrey, and that was in '95, so it's been a while. So your only interaction with the character, by and large, at least what you think of, is going to be Jim Carrey, right?
Yes.
And his version of the Riddler really does just feel like a riff on the Joker.
Exactly.
Well, more to the point, it's Frank Gorshin's Riddler.
Which is-
that's what Carey is doing. He's doing Frank Gorshin's Riddler. This is not a slam. I don't know if that was Schumacher or if that was him or something, they came to that.
No, I think it's Schumacher was very inspired by 66 for his films. Again, outside of just the Riddler, I had the same problem with Two-Face in that movie as well. I mean, they had, the characters always felt the same with a gimmick. Like it was, you know what I mean? Like there was always a really cheesy gimmick. So with Two-Face, I don't feel like they ever really got into the psychology in his films, but they still had the whole surface level, like, oh, everything's split in half.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one thing I agree with all of you. Again, casual represent here, but it's just like there's never been, at least in the Schumacher's films, like of Batman, there's never been that distinction in
film. No,
it basically, I mean, to me, it feels kind of more like wrestling, where it's like they're all heels, and it's just like we're gonna paint them all a different color, and here's like two words about them, and this is why they're different, but they operate the exact same way.
You're not wrong. I mean,
Right.
that's true for 66. It's true for a lot of the comic books that influence 66.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, though, small screen stuff, I think you'll approve of some of these other voice voice actors. Well, this one we have Smallville favorite John Glover.
Oh, you took it right out from underneath you, Joshua.
Well, no, I'm wanting you to. How much do you love John Glover?
I love him. It was funny because I, of course, had watched this show when I was a kid, way before I watched Smallville. But then I watched Smallville, and John Glover plays Lionel Luthor, which is Lex Luthor's father in Smallville.
Okay.
And by the way, hell of a performance in that role. Like he plays a great villain in that show. Like just great
and
villain.
Very different than his Riddler.
Much different than the Riddler. The Riddler is more hands off, more disconnected. Like it's all a game. Lionel plays games, but he's more of like a.
It's cat and mouse. He's very cruel.
Right.
Yeah.
And very cruel. And like he likes to taunt his victims and play with them, and like to show off how smart he is. The Riddler does like to show off at how smart he is, but in a different sort of way. It's less like playing emotional games with the people and more about like being the smartest guy in the room always and being like, oh, you're clever, you answer my riddle, but really I'm not even in the room.
Now, on the much underrated The Batman, Robert Englund plays and it's creepy as hell.
I have to watch it.
And he is...
What year?
This would have been kind of in this uncanny valley.
It's like 2006, 2007.
Oh,
somewhere
so
in
like
there.
the Bat Drought kind of.
So
Yes.
here's the thing. After Justice League ended, and actually might have been while Justice League was still on Cartoon Network on Kids
definitely.
WB, they had another show called The Batman. And you know what? It's not a home run, but I will say this. They were trying very hard to not be anything. They were trying to separate themselves from Batman, the entire DCAU. So they came up with like really strange and dramatically different takes on all the characters.
Yeah,
It's also a lot more frenetic. It's aimed a little bit younger.
Yeah.
So everybody, all the villains know Kung Fu.
Yeah.
You know, which is great. It's great for this show, and it results in some really different takes in like the Joker and the Penguin. But the Riddler is, he's just real cerebral. He is like holding the city hostage in you have to solve these puzzles to get through it. At the time, Batman is teamed up with a female police officer off book. And so she is the one who has to actually do the hands-on stuff, but she has Batman in her ear helping her out because the Riddler knows. He's like, Batman, don't come anywhere near this thing. And it's Robert Englund just being creepy.
Nice.
I love it.
If
Freddy
you look at
Krueger is the Riddler. I dig it.
He's like long
Interesting.
hair and he's very thin.
Yeah.
That show is much underrated. It's not, as you say, it's not a home run, but they do the Bat Family stuff a million times better than BTAS does. A million times better than Brave and the Bold. All the villains are great, honestly, but really different. They are not what you want to become like your iconic take, but they're weird and awesome.
Right.
So really different takes, and your Moriarty comparison is excellent because comic book wise, he's been kind of a consulting villain sometimes. He went straight and became a private detective to basically out Batman on the right side.
Dude, I dig on that real hard.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds awesome.
He's done a lot of really good things. Hush, I think you can't mention the Riddler without talking about Hush. How he's actually, the whole comic book's like a mystery about who's Hush, but really you find out the whole thing's a ploy by the Riddler who's dying of cancer. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's crazy good stuff.
Riddler is 1,000% the best part of Hush. The rest of Hush is kind of like a cover album.
Yeah.
Like every moment in Hush was done better somewhere else, but they weren't done together.
Yeah.
Right.
And Riddler is the glue that holds that thing together.
Correct.
So,
Okay, yeah. So now it's funny. I actually read 1.5 volumes of Hush because it's like, because like I was borrowing it from a friend and then I was reading it, but I was like reading it really casually, and now to hear like it's like, oh, that's the end, the end game. I'm like, oh, that like puts everything else in perspective because they were like, okay, I need to take my comic back. You've had it for like 6 months. I'm like, all right, here you go. And then I didn't finish it. So, but knowing that, it's one of those things where it's like you need to see it once to see it, you know what I mean? Yeah, you have to read it once to be able to be like, oh, now it's like, now I can actually read it, right? So that actually, it's like, okay, because I was just sitting on my nightstand just like gathering dust for a cool minute.
You may notice from the way I talk about Hush that I don't blame you.
I mean, Hush is okay. It's an okay.
Jim Lee drew it. It's very
fun.
pretty.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's pretty,
yeah,
it's fun.
The bat kiss of Selena. It's really good stuff, you know.
And I mean, it's just it was an event comic very similar to Nightfall, but Nightfall was better. and it ends a lot differently.
Nightfall was making a point.
Right.
And Hush was selling copies.
Yes, but although I do think that the use of the Riddler at the end of that is really powerful.
I agree with that 100%.
I'd also want to give a shout out to in the Arkham games, a really great use of Riddler, a guy who is not physically going to be a really great boss or anything like that, but the whole Alexandra, have you played the Batman Arkham games?
I mean, I just know of them really.
So there's basically so firstly he has these trophies sprinkled throughout the map, which is fun, and you just find those. But the cooler things is like you have these little clues about you have to go around and find question marks framed all over the game.
Oh, that's
in
cool.
all of the games, and they get more and more with each one. And like they get really creative. Like you have to sometimes you have to align your perspective just right and take a picture of it to get the clue. And then
like you're standing on the building, part of the question mark is on one building, but the dot is on the ground, or like you have to position.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like a magic eye.
Yeah.
Almost.
So is that like you have to collect enough question marks to be able to access the Riddler's arc?
No. You actually you're it's cool because it's an ongoing thing. As you get clues, you talk to the Riddler because he's basically like held up in some separate room somewhere talking to you, and like it ends differently with every game. I think there's one of them. I think it's City. You actually confront him proper, but I know like in Arkham Origins, like the police Batman does like one of those, I knew where you were the whole time. And the police, you can hear the police show up and like arrest him and stuff over like the speaker, know. It's like stuff like that.
Now from Asylum and to an extent in City, it's much more like this episode of BTAS, which I really approve of, where Riddler wins by really not playing. Like, how does he get away? Because I set this up and left. What am I, an idiot?
Yeah, totally.
What am I, the rest of your villains?
I really appreciated that about this, and which, whatever, spoilers at the end of this episode.
No, we spoil the hell out of the episode. But I'm going to be careful about spoilers in one more way that Joker and Riddler get contrasted, because most recently in the comics there was an actual story arc called The War of Jokes and Riddles. It's very recent, so I am actually going to tiptoe around spoiling that one. But they very much dive into this. How are they different? How are they the same? Let's put these fictional characters in actual confrontation with one another when they are sort of in pop cultural confrontation with one another, right? Like, let's make this textual.
Diggy.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. But like I said, I'm going to dance around that one and let that go. Just go read that. We'll talk about it on Twitter.
Yeah, okay. Cool. I'm into it.
Alexandra, so you don't love Joker-ish Riddler. How did you find this Riddler?
I actually appreciated the cerebral nature of Riddler. I mean, it gets to the whole idea of, the guy's name's Riddler. Like, he's got to be good and smart. Like, and I've never really felt like, having Carrie's Riddler, like, being so campy and over the top. It's like I never fully understood that at his core, he's never going to be kung fuing anyone to death or whatever. Yeah. He's going to be, puppeteering as, he's escaping. And that's one thing that I really appreciated about this. And also, side note about origin stories. This one didn't feel so, I don't know. I just have I think Marvel has done a big disservice, like in just like the cinematic universe of now. They're getting away from it more and more, like kind of backdooring people and, letting them have like a movie that isn't just like, let's think about how they started, which is so snooze fest at this point. So, but to have an origin story that doesn't feel like so shoehorned, in the fact that his origin story, so it's not related to Batman at all, which I deeply appreciated, because I feel like, Two-Face, like, his path crosses with Batman before he even becomes Mr. Villain. And then, same with Joker, like all these villains are inextricably linked with Batman. Yeah. And it's refreshing to be like, oh, here's a guy who just got started away from Batman, and now he's doing his thing. And I love the boardroom situation, because I love whenever Bruce Wayne interacts with the Bruce Wayne persona interacts with villains and heroes, and he's having to still be Bruce Wayne, and he's having to then piece it together and then intervene as Batman. I love that stuff. So all of those things coalesce into me really enjoying this episode. So
excellent. I mean, you are really in the right place with BTAS for all that stuff.
Yeah.
Those are two of the bullets in my notes.
You head on. It skips the origin story. There's not an origin story. It's one of those more like the Riddler's doing his own game and Batman finds out about it, and then the Riddler becomes curious and not infatuated, but obsessed with, oh, this guy's pretty smart. Well, I've got to continue to prove I'm smarter than him.
So you definitely, in the very next Riddler episode, get that. The thing that I so not to contradict, because you're right, but at the same time, in this one, it is a very specific piece of information that Batman brings to the table.
Right.
Yes.
That Riddler goes, oh, now I have to pay attention to you. He figures out that the Riddler is Edward Nygma.
Yes.
But to your point, Alexandra, he figures that out because he's Bruce Wayne.
Exactly.
So great.
And like I love how it brings up the fact that Bruce Wayne, one of my favorite parts of the episode, Bruce Wayne reads the line in, Kevin Conroy's, masterpiece of a performance, as always, reads it as Bruce Wayne voice, and then literally hard cut to next scene, he's reading it in Batman voice, and I'm like, ooh,
yeah.
spooky. I love it.
Because Lucius Fox is there in the office, so he's still got to be like in character,
Yes.
but then in the cave, he's doing the Batman thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we will talk so much more about that after the redesign, but the loss of the Bruce Wayne voice entirely after the redesign is the second biggest loss after Joker's lips.
Yeah. Some things about the redesign are brilliant. I actually like a lot of things with the redesign, but the Joker and yes, the loss of the Bruce Wayne voice are two things that you're like, what were they thinking?
Okay, when does the redesign hit? What year?
Technically, it's season 4. I guess it would be probably 95, 96.
Yeah,
in
roughly.
that whenever
Around
it's
about when Superman
came
comes out, because they start, and again, there's a preview for a future episode. They bring them closer together.
Yeah, because Superman has a very
He's blockier.
Yeah, the like hard blocky lines they take that even further with Justice League.
Yeah.
And
when they were, and this was a transition in the way it was just the animation
That
was changing.
technology.
Yeah.
Technology is the big deal. Like you may note, everything on BTAS is still hand drawn.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
And they just weren't doing it that way by the time they were launching a new show.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back and see that should probably mention at least Daniel Mackeridge, who is voiced by Gary Frank. This is the guy that the Riddler's after,
Yes.
really. The guy who screwed over the Riddler. And I guess the only origin thing we get is there's like really a really brief bookend. Like this guy just screws him out of a job and a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's all we need.
What more do you need?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And this character's actually pretty one note, and honestly, but the thing is, we get that bookend at the end where it's like, which I don't know how to feel about it. I feel like it feels very weird. It's like, oh, but justice was still served. I'm like, I don't know. He still got a lot of money out of it. So
Speaking to the stuff that Alexandra liked, right? Like I like that the Riddler gets away.
Yes.
Because he's the Riddler. He's
Right.
smart.
10 out of
Right.
10. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Me
And
too.
he's not yet so committed to the beating Batman that he will sacrifice his freedom for. We'll get
Right,
there,
right.
but it's not there yet.
Right.
And it gives some real justice. I feel real justice to Mockridge, mostly because of Batman's final line.
right,
What's a good night's sleep worth?
right.
Right? I mean,
It is a great line.
you're not wrong.
It is a
he
great.
does
last
come
line.
out of it with a bunch of money,
Right.
but just imagine how much of that he's frittering away on personal security and all this stuff.
Literally sleeping with a shotgun.
And yeah. So it's like, cool, you're rich. Is it really?
Is it worth it?
And
Sure.
it's the only place where I feel like the title lands at all.
Right.
The question of if you were so smart, why aren't you rich? Well, if you're so rich, why are you so scared? I mean,
Right.
it's,
yeah. Oh, I like. Yeah, I
point.
like that perspective on it. I think, if we're gonna critique the title for a sec, I feel like there could have been because what it does is it makes it, for me, the title, if you're so smart, then why aren't you rich? It makes it a little less about the Riddler in a way. It makes it more about, like, it makes the Riddler not so much about intellectualism, which I think is what he is at his core. He always wants to one up and show everything off, but it makes it like, it feels like it brings him down a notch. Like it makes it more about the money
Yeah.
than what it is about, like, that he's intellectually this genius who should be in Mensa, blah blah blah. Like I would appreciate more of something that goes in that direction than making it about, like, it really does make it about his, like, obsession. I mean, which is not an unvalid point that he's, being
he's an
screwed out
OCD,
of this
right.
idea, but I think it's there's so much more there. I think
Yeah.
that's the core. There's so much more to the character.
I have a historical perspective.
Okay.
I think. Not a Riddler historical perspective,
Oh.
a comic book historical perspective. I think that Riddler, having his origin rooted in basically signing a work for hire contract, is a commentary on the way business is done in superhero comic books.
Interesting.
There is an actual organization called the Hero Initiative. I recommend giving money to it, that basically sees to the insurance needs and things of aging comic book creators, because the actual companies did not have their best interests at heart. Siegel and Schuster sold Superman for $300. And now that's $319.38.
Adjusted from inflation, but
that
it's
character
still
is worth
It
way
ain't
more than
Superman
that.
money,
Yeah.
right?
right.
Jack Kirby, one of the architects of the Marvel Universe, moves across the street to DC because of how badly his supposed friends, Stan Lee and Joe Lieberman, were treating him. And then when DC also treats him not great, not as bad, but not great, because there's no other game in town, he goes back to Marvel. And this is actually true all through superhero comic book history, that you have these characters that are made that become these ongoing, never-ending IP farms for animation, for movies, for all this stuff. And nobody expected that to be the case. And so they just did work for hire. Mm-hmm. And so technically, legally accurate. You do not own the work that you did for this publisher. But ethically, you're making millions or billions. Take care of these guys in their old age.
And I think to double down on that, and the context is a lot different today, but if the Riddler is a game developer and game developers are treated largely the same way,
Exactly.
it's a crap, and it's getting really bad right now where they're actually talking about building a game developers union now.
Yeah, they should.
Absolutely.
Absolutely should. But it's the same thing. Like you spend 70 or 80 hours a week making this thing, and you know, unless you're one of a handful of people, you don't
see the dividends.
You don't see it at all.
And
then when the game's done, you get laid off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think I see you completely with the kind of, it brings Riddler down a notch, except I also like that sometimes they're criminals.
Yeah.
So it's okay if it's also just about the money. I mean, so it doesn't offend, but yeah, I'd like it. I get you.
Yeah.
But I like that there's a little bit of a commentary. I think there's a real world commentary here.
Oh, no,
you know?
absolutely. I mean, that was like the first thing that really came to mind was the idea of all, like artists that come to a company, and you come to a company because, and like it goes back to the idea of for exposure, and it's like, oh, you should be overjoyed that in our capitalistic, hellscape that you get to do the thing you're good at and you want to do for literal earth dollars so you don't starve, right? But at the end of the day, whenever the ROI for the company is going to be massive, but yet you're still going to be either paid your mediocre salary or laid off. I mean, I really appreciated that take.
Yeah. Well, again, because the company's like, oh, no, we own your idea. It's your idea, and we're going to make tons of money, but we don't actually have to pay you for your idea because you're part of the company.
Yeah.
And whatever.
We're already paying you, lol.
What's fascinating to me is that you bring up, Caleb, is that this would have at the time much more been a commentary on the way comic book creators have been treated. But here we are in the year of our Lord 2018, and the fact that he's a game developer is
kind of
spot
hilarious.
on,
Right?
Like, it probably wasn't untrue for game development in the 90s,
but it was
it's not the industry that it
different.
is now,
Right.
right? Yeah,
Right.
So yeah,
There were
guys.
Yeah, there were very few multi-million-dollar game IPs at the time.
Yeah.
So it's a very prescient look from these creators that they were looking back to the way that people were mistreated. And I guess I'm going to go ahead and say that's super sad that they could look back to the 30s, 40s, and 50s to see how creators were badly treated, make a cautionary tale about that 26 years later is even more accurate.
Right.
Because of the occupation that they chose to be the vehicle for this backwards looking commentary.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to, and we'll get back to the episode, but I just think the idea, and Alex hit it spot on, as new art and new media comes out, that's always the line you're going to get from these big companies. Well, this new thing that there's not very many people doing that job, we're going to pay you for it, and you should just be thankful that we're paying you for this thing that's not proven to be a great successful venture. And then when they make the money, it's like, cool. So what's your next idea that we can pay you a flat salary for? But hey, what about I gave you this idea? Can I get some more leadership within the company? What can I do to grow? No, we just want you down there. And we'll pay you this crap money, but we'll take your ideas and make a lot of money off of it.
To circle it back to the episode, this is a thing that BTAS does very well. Caleb and I have talked about it a lot. And Alexandra, you bring it up in terms of Bruce Wayne being important to the plot. Mm-hmm. But I also love that they introduce these awful business people.
Oh, yeah.
As contrast to the fact that Bruce Wayne is a good business person. He takes care of his people.
Exactly.
He's doing this. Listen, Wayne Enterprise is going to make the money. It's fine. But what's his main concern? We're going to bring all these jobs.
Right.
We're going to make $5.5 million a year in jobs. the mayor will be happy. I'm taking care of Gotham, and yeah, my pocket gets lined too. But it's so different from Mockridge's.
Well, his approach is how can he make the city better, and less about how can I make myself better and my company better.
And one thing I really appreciate, again, I'm sure you've discussed this at some point on regarding BTEZ's Bruce Wayne specifically. Again, another great distinction of this show. It shows Bruce Wayne where he is because he deserves to be here. It's not just that he came from a family that was already wealthy and he's a trust fund baby and so he gets to do whatever he wants, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's also like, you can get a trust fund. I've known people that have had trust funds and they don't have trust funds anymore because they're not like good with money.
Yeah.
So it's like the guy maybe he had this pocket of money, but he was wise with his investments and has turned it over and is a good businessman. And I also appreciate that while one thing that I always think circle back to whenever I contemplate, I mean, even Nolan's Batman is just the idea that when we see Bruce Wayne persona, we kind of see him more in this like idea of like, oh, he's this millionaire playboy and that's all he does is party, party, party. And then someone else like does with his money and then he's Batman, Batman, you know? So it's just like the idea that he's also not just like a slave to the party and to the ladies, and you know, that he's actually in Bruce Wayne world is like doing like good stuff, as Bruce Wayne. Right. He's still a superhero minus the cape and the voice as Bruce Wayne.
This is very near and dear to my heart.
Love it.
and this is again, I think, Joshua, we've talked about it on multiple past episodes. The show goes out of its way to show, oh, he's actually doing good things as Bruce Wayne.
Exactly.
And he actually has his interest stoked out on the street level with these people. As Bruce Wayne, he volunteers. Like these are things
we've literally seen him volunteer at homeless shelters and stuff as Bruce Wayne.
In the show.
And also empowering to the kids at home. You know, they're watching the fact that I don't need tights and I don't need a mask and I don't need like lots of gadgets, and even if that helps, I can still be a superhero in my day to day by being a good person.
All the ways, yeah.
That's so nice. This is why this Batman's so great.
They never hang a lampshade on it. Not really. Not in a learn this lesson, kids.
Exactly.
It just keeps happening.
Pervasive.
This one is a little bit above the kids, but it's good for us too.
You know?
Yeah. It's not like, and it's funny because like this is the era of now. This is a very special lesson episodes in like serialized television, like Family Matters and all that. You know, Saved by the Bell and stuff like that. And we don't. That's not what they're doing here, which is amazing.
So I might be changing gears here, but I do want to talk a little bit about something. I don't know if it's aged poorly, but I can definitely tell this is a product of the 90s, which is the presentation of video games as a children's thing for kids, which is definitely a 90s era thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and that's fair. At the time, it was marketed as a toy. And there's a lot of different ways they showcase this, just the way Batman talks about it, but also using Robin specifically to explain how the game works, because he's a gamer. Like, he would be the only one who knows how that works.
Yeah, and how old is Robin in
18, 19?
Okay, I mean, so
college. He's definitely
young
college
adult.
age. Yeah,
young
that's
adult.
why he's not around. He's
Gotcha.
at college.
But and like and we just did Robin's Reckoning recently, but that was the first episode they finally like gave us a definitive. Oh, here's Robin. Like otherwise, they really just bring him in whenever it feels like they need him for something.
It's like he's got a pulse on the young people. Let's bring him in.
Yeah.
Here's the missed opportunity there too. Is that a thing that I really appreciate from Riddler episodes of Batman 66 is that Robin is usually the one who figures out the riddle. Batman is doing detective things in as much as they ever do it on 66, right? But the Riddlers are 75-80% figured out by Robin. And at the beginning of this episode, you see Robin playing the game, and I'm like, he's going to be the guy that figures all these out because he's dialed in on the thing.
He is. He knows how the game works until...
But he done goofs whenever Alfred shows up and schools his ass. Like,
right?
It's like, it's obviously a curved line, idiot.
Don't you love those actual Super Mario Brothers sound effects they used too? Did you guys catch that?
What? No.
Oh yeah, it was definitely like actual Nintendo sounds they used for like the little sound effects when he was playing the game.
They're just a tiny Japanese company. They'll never amount to much or sue the hell out of us.
Well, no one's ever called him on it.
And I'm sure, either no one's called him on it, or way back in the day they made some sort of weird agreement to pay for the sound effect or something.
That's
but
amazing.
But it was like the jumping sound, the boing, boing.
Dude, you're right.
Yeah, totally,
oh my god,
that was a real nice Easter
little
egg.
homage.
But I think it's hilarious though, because yes, Robin has this game figured out, and we see that when they go into the maze, he's got it all figured out, and then Batman. Actually, after he does a couple rules, is actually like, you know what? Screw this. I don't forget. I'm gonna break the rules to beat the game when he hijacks the Hand of Fate or whatever. I was like,
So, okay, that's a good opportunity to talk about some of the stuff I don't think works very well in this episode. The puns are not riddles. Riddles are not puns.
Agreed.
Necessarily. And if they are going to be, they need to be better than these. And that leads to the labyrinth, because I do like the idea of Batman beating the Riddler by just refusing to play the game, right? I don't like that in Riddler's first episode.
Yeah,
Right.
it felt so cheap.
It's cheap
It did
in
feel
his
cheap.
first appearance. In his first appearance, I want to see Batman outsmart the Riddler in order to lay the bait for, well, I got to come back and outsmart Batman.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
And
the whole idea that it's like you got 10 minutes and I'm like, Batman's just going to show how cool and smart he is by like doing the thing. And then like the musical notation puzzle. I loved that. That was so clever.
So good.
That was good.
So good. And then he's like, no, the writers can't write any more riddles right now. We're just gonna U-turn out of the clever time.
in Arab, you always eat with your right, which I don't know what that means anyway. Again, things that haven't aged very well since
Okay,
the 90s.
I can actually explain that one.
Okay.
Culturally,
I'm
and
sure-
I'm
I'm sure it's
speaking
correct.
to a culture
Sure.
that I am not part of. So if I get some of this wrong, please forgive me, listeners, and correct me, and we'll do a little something with it later. But at least broadly culturally, I have no idea what's going on right now. But what they're getting at is that you do unclean things, clean yourself with your left hand.
Yeah.
So your left hand is typically less clean
Yeah.
because you've been doing unclean things with it. Not necessarily ritually unclean. I mean, like, you've been cleaning your body.
Yeah.
Okay. So you eat with your right hand, which is typically cleaner. That's not a bad riddle for a bunch of white people in the 90s.
Sure.
Exactly.
He does talk about it in a way that I don't love.
Yeah, it's exactly that's how it comes across. You're like,
right.
Yikes.
It's one of those things. Again, this is a '90s thing,
Right.
and we talked about this in the Catwoman episode, and I think we might talk about it in a future episode also. Just the way things are a lot different now than they were in the early '90s. Like certain the way we talk about gender and race, it's a lot more sensitive, and we've thought through those things a little more. With if they at the time, even with the best intentions at the time, it still just kind of
Wasn't
comes at
great.
you. You're like, ooh.
Yeah.
Also, why doesn't Batman read Arabic? He's Batman. That was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I left my utility belt outside, but I still got Google Translate in my wristwatch right here. You know, just
Also,
like,
the
what?
Palm Top computer is crap. I hate that thing. It's there for him to cheat at the end.
That was cheating.
We never see it before now.
Nope.
We never see it again.
What? Like, I
was-
just assumed that just like, oh, we're establishing something.
This is definitely one of those episodes where he does a lot of stuff where you just look at it in the meme because he's Batman comes around. You
and
know?
it's, again, if this were the second Riddler episode where he was cheating with technology that wasn't in the belt, I knew it was the Riddler, so I put some stuff in my outfit that wasn't the belt.
Totally good.
Right.
And then I just don't play the game by his rules, and that's how we win. But in this first one, I want to hear good riddles, and I want to
to
see
worry
Batman-
that Batman's gonna lose.
Yeah.
I want them to struggle. Not just be able to school it because it's like, oh, I'm gonna put this drone thing and like hop on it. No, look, I'm smart.
And
There.
the musical notes show you how good that could have been.
Yes,
Right.
that's
If
why
they
I
had
was
just
so
not
sad.
even had a good one, maybe I wouldn't notice as much. But
And can I just throw out that I think the Morse code thing is absurd that he figured that out so quickly?
well, okay. So I do not myself know Morse code.
I don't
well,
either. I don't either.
But I have ham radio operating friends who know Morse code very well. Basically, that's how it would go. Like
They would look at the lights flickering and be like, Morse code. Do they do that every time they see
To
flickering
me-
lights?
the patterns become. It's like if you heard your name yelled out
Yeah.
in the party kind of thing. Like
Okay.
it's a language that they know.
Sure.
And maybe it'd take them a minute. I'm not saying instantaneously.
Well, that's cartoons
but
on
that's
20 minutes.
not a ridiculous jump.
Sure.
honestly.
Okay.
Well,
If you
to
are
me-
eyes deep in Morse code.
Yeah, but like as someone that doesn't know Morse code but knows like just kind of generally that cadence, to me the flicker like looked too regular. It looked more like strobing.
Oh, I'm pretty sure that's not actually Morse code.
No,
Yeah,
not at all.
and so it's like if it had been, you know,
Yes, yeah.
like that's usually how Morse code is conveyed. Like when it's like very irregular, like kind of beats like that. But it literally looked like someone just strobed a strobe light on the entire
Yeah,
city.
yeah.
It's so silly.
I mean, the corners get cut just a little bit. There's so much they do right
They
in
do.
this episode.
They do.
And there's
Oh.
stuff that just gets the corners just
Big
get cut.
miss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like at a high level, conceptually, this episode works really, really well. The execution's a little botched when you actually get down to the riddles and how Batman solves things. But I think like on a high scale, like the plot beats and everything work really, really well. And the Batman portrayal works really, really well. And the Riddler portrayal works really, really well.
Yeah,
which is why I still
that's
think,
his point of the episode.
Yeah.
The Riddler portrayal.
Yeah, it's when you get down to that like Michael level, that lower level where they probably only had, this is TV. They probably only had like 7 days to write this episode or something at that. So
now I'm going to say, I understand how difficult riddles are. The first bit of fan fiction I ever wrote in my life was like in my 30s, and it was because I accidentally came up with a good riddle for the Riddler.
Nice.
Playing with my kid.
Aww.
Like I say the riddle. In the other room, my wife goes, "That's a pretty good one. You might want to write that down." And I couldn't let it go because it was that good a riddle. So I understand how difficult good riddles are.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
This is Riddler episode.
Yeah.
You stay a little after. You work this out.
right.
Yeah. You like step up your A game. Like, or you could at least get like a book of riddles from the public library.
real.
You don't
For
even
real.
have to like come up with them yourself.
I'll say, for me, the biggest place that you can show nobody really cared about the riddles is when Batman gets his last dig in on the Riddler, and his riddle to the Riddler is, how do you beat a Minotaur in one blow or something like
Yeah.
that? And I'm like, you mean with one hand? How do you beat a Minotaur with one hand? It's the hand of friggin' fate.
Right. We
Yeah.
just saw
Like,
you writing.
You guys did this
It was
at
pretty-
4:30 on a Friday.
It was
Yeah.
It was I know it
Wah,
definitely
wah,
felt that one
wah.
felt kind of lazy.
Yeah.
I mean, and you just kind of roll that back from there where I can see the better option in your worse option.
Yeah.
And just roll that back for almost all the riddles.
Yeah.
You know.
One thing we haven't talked about yet. So whenever we have Mockridge and the Riddler's in the dark, and then he gives him the ring puzzle, I was seriously creeped out by, I don't know why, but just like, and this is something that I've always had, like, not like a fear, but I've always had like a fear. I guess it's more goes back to like almost like the Saw franchise where you're given a riddle and your life depends on it, and like the fear of like choking up. And so the idea, he gives him this ring puzzle and he's like an idiot and actually puts him on his handcuffs because he's dumb.
Yes.
But like just I don't know, that whole sequence felt so sinister and I loved it.
Yes,
like that
yes.
to me, again, distinctive nature from the Joker in this Riddler portrayal. Because the Joker's sinister, but in a very Joker flavor way.
Well, he's a lot more random and unpredictable,
Yeah,
and you don't
it's
know what to expect.
Chaotic versus lawful evil.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And when the Joker goes for a gimmick, it's a joke gimmick.
Yes.
But puzzles is another area for the Riddler that you can go to, like these ring puzzles, or when they play it for a laugh, but the giant human-sized Chinese finger trap.
That was so
that was
cool.
hilarious.
Which,
That was
again,
great.
a place where our nomenclature does not age well. But this big paper finger trap over my head, slowly suffocating me, thank you, no. You are on a show that has a dynamic duo, and they don't both get caught in
I
it.
thought that was where they were going. God, like
It's just I love this Riddler. I love a lot of the sort of like scaffolding for this story, but in the actual riddling, it just kind of falls
riddle
apart.
me this, Batman.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
not
Again,
so solid on that.
conceptually good. The execution was just kind of botched.
So, having revisited this episode, you and I, Caleb, and having probably your first,
probably, solidly.
certainly your first in
in
15
recent
years, 20 years.
that I can remember.
Would you consider this a watcher or a skipper?
Oh, it's a watcher,
Okay.
I think it's a watcher. You have
Okay.
to,
especially if you're not familiar with the Riddler.
if you're a person that has a very distinct picture of who the Riddler is, and it's not a cerebral one, it's like just basically a flavor of the Joker, and it confuses you, definitely must watch.
Okay, that's kind of where I landed. I'm glad to know that we agree, because I sort of don't love this episode, but there are enough parts of it that I do love that set up the Riddler coming back that I'm like,
And he has some good follow-up episodes. Well, I recall them being good follow-up
Yeah,
episodes, and I'm excited to also revisit as well.
yeah, definitely.
For Rizzle.
Joshua, I'm right there with you. I think, definitely watch it, especially if you're having a hard time recalling the Riddler or wonder why the Riddler's a cool villain. There's
Riddler A+, episode C+.
C.
Okay, fair enough.
C.
Yeah, I would probably lean C+.
Okay. I can with that. Well, Joshua, before we wrap up our conversation, as always, we like to throw out some recommendations from other media.
Oh, I have some.
You have some.
I do.
I've got a couple myself.
I have one that I feel is super duper on point.
Do it.
Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Okay.
There it is. No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
No, you're right.
It's Simon. Simon Says.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. I don't know how I didn't think of that. That's perfect.
I have heard a probably apocryphal story that was adapted from a possible Batman script. That story is probably a lie.
I don't
But it's
care.
one that
I'll
I can
take it.
believe because it is so Riddler-esque.
Yes.
And you really have to have a team of two. You have to have a duo bouncing off one another personality-wise in order to solve several of the riddles.
Yes. Yep.
So
Dude.
And then, of course, at the end, you find out the whole thing's rigged. Like,
Exactly.
it's so Riddler-esque. Yeah, you're spot on.
I'm so in the idea that the Riddler, going back to what you were saying, at the end of the day, the Riddler is a flavor of petty criminal. Like that's
Right.
yeah, like oh my god, like to me almost I feel like that works better in my head because like I love the first Die Hard, but I don't have a lot of love for the rest of the franchise myself. So it's just like I feel like that almost works better in my head as a Batman story.
yeah, no, I agree. It's good.
I
It's
actually
very good.
think I like to pretend Die Hard 2 didn't exist because the way I look at it, Die Hard with a Vengeance is the first arguably
actual sequel.
Yeah,
Yes.
agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
like,
it's-
we're going to
'cause it's-
grow on this
Yeah,
concept.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's similar concept, but we're not going to do just another skyscraper or airport.
And
like
then
it's
it also gets to the sinister nature of the Riddler because like you just if you shove the Riddler's him in to that concept, even if it was, John McClane doing the thing and not Batman, but even if you shove that in there, just the idea of you're on a time frame,
Yeah.
big things and bad things are going to happen if you don't do this. That seems so Riddler. Like
Right.
it's fantastic.
right.
And
And
at the
the
end of the
stakes are
day-
very high.
Dang.
We're just stealing things.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all a cover up for the fact that we're robbing a bank.
Yeah.
We're robbing the world's biggest bank.
Dang.
Yeah, so that's my pull. Die
Backward.
Hard with a Vengeance.
Alexandra, you have any recommendations?
Go to you first. Come back to me.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a couple, and I actually struggle with this one a little bit, but I ended up with Dexter, the show specifically,
Oh.
season 1, where Dexter's hunting the ice truck killer, who leaves a lot of very similar clues, and it's very gamey.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's actually really bright. If you haven't seen Dexter, I don't want to spoil it, but it's definitely except for that one, it's actually all leading to something a little more specific and a little less sinister. I mean, it's still
Yeah,
sinister.
yeah.
Also,
but for
an
Dexter, it's
origin
not sinister.
story in
Yes.
its own way.
Yes, a
Yeah.
really great origin story.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid.
So specifically season 1. I mean, the rest of the show has moments when it's great, but
It
season,
has moments sometimes.
until season 4, and then it just jumped off a cliff.
Never again.
Yeah, so Dexter season 1, Alexandra, you also already mentioned Saw, so I'll throw the Saw franchise out there. I think the first film legitimately
I
is
really like the first
I think
film.
the first film's actually a very, very good movie. Like there's a little bit of gore, but it's really not what everyone thinks it is. Like it's a real like mystery thriller. Not even really a horror, hardly. The first one. Now the sequels is where you drift off into the territory, but to torture porn territory. But man, it's another podcast, guys.
Yeah, he's the biggest Saw fanboy I've ever met in my life.
They're better than people. Yes, they're torture porn, but they're also good stories, which sounds well. They're also soap operas.
Compelling.
They're compelling
Yeah.
soap operas that actually have really awesome critiques on different facets of society that no one ever taught. Because it's, it just gets
It's easy to get lost
and all the blood and
in the rest of it.
yeah. But to the fair, the sequels definitely do play into that more riddly thing. Like you have this much time to figure out this riddle, and if you don't figure it out, or it's either usually when you figure out the riddle, it's like I have to do something horrifying to my body to
Yeah,
not die. But
yeah.
anyway, I think that's a great
It's
recommendation.
interesting for contrast, right? Like, so if you're looking for ways to differentiate genre takes, these are very small or personal type of traps.
Right.
They're going to be very bad for one or two or, possibly a dozen people. The Riddler goes big after this. This
Right.
one's very personal, but after this, it's more like the Die Hard with a Vengeance, where it's like, oh no, I'm a blow up a city block.
Right.
I'm gonna blow up this bridge.
Right.
And this is not for better or for worse, but it's just like superhero stuff needs to be turned up a couple of notches. I need to have a city in danger. And it's down to Batman and Robin to figure out the riddle as opposed to releasing a handful of people from torture.
Right. And it's always people, and to your point, it's always people that are somehow connected to John Kramer in one way or another, almost
Yeah,
always.
yeah.
So,
I mean, that's not a comment. That's not bad or good.
Oh, sure. No, but
it's just
no, it is
these
a
are
big
very
distinction.
similar concepts that get treated very differently based on the genre assumptions that you bring.
Right.
Totally.
Alexandra, you have anything you'd like to recommendations to throw out there?
So I have 2 recommendations, one of which Caleb would be able to speak on this more, but from what I know of Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, there's a lot of kind of that puzzle stuff. I know you have to do terms in phases with the moon, and oh god, it's not.
It's a great game. And there is some Riddle-y type stuff in that game. Yes.
Yeah, I know that they're the franchise in itself has a lot of.
No, but that one in particular, because the riddles are more personal on that one. But the real puzzles are the things that are happening in the lives of the people in the world that you're trying to solve. And there are actually riddles involved in that as well.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, take that one with a grain of salt.
No, it's a brilliant game. You should go play it. It's on the 3DS or the N64. It's an underrated. It's unlike any other Zelda.
And then my other one, I would also mention something I do have much more an intimate knowledge with, Harry Potter 4, specifically just for the Triwizard Tournament, because as okay, you've read Harry Potter 4, you guys, by now, or seen the film. There are these giant puzzles and riddles that basically anchor each task, even if the first one is a little more action packed. The second one with solving the egg, and then the third one he's in a literal maze and having to solve these things with a giant. There's a Sphinx task, blah blah blah. But the whole idea that at the end of the day, one nefarious asshole was using it for an entire cover up so he could bring Voldemort back from the dead. It's
pretty good.
It's pretty brilliant.
That's
Yeah.
very Riddlery.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just that masterminding, and the whole idea that they do resurrect Voldemort and Voldemort gets away. So just similar to the the kind of the Riddler.
Yeah. We were
in
doing
this
a
one.
thing.
Yeah.
It's nice that you guys were doing that other thing. We're doing this thing.
Yeah.
And at
Oh,
the
you
end,
all
the
think you're
villain
doing
gets
this
away.
thing, but really what we're trying to do is get this thing.
Yeah.
It's spectacular.
And also the idea that something that is always gets me about supervillain plots is it's a long, drawn out, long game, convoluted plot to just get Harry to one place at one time.
Yeah.
A year from then.
No, that's a very that
is a Riddler
very
type thing to do, though.
superhero type thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is.
Or super villain, I guess.
Yeah.
That kind of level of machination.
It's why couldn't you just kidnap him?
Yeah, it's you could. But the whole idea that their long game was so people don't freak out. Voldemort's back because they kidnapped Harry Potter and we all believe the boy who lived. But the idea that basically Harry's reputation and then of course Dumbledore's reputation is put in dire straits whenever he comes back, and then owning the media narrative, and of course the Ministry doesn't want to ruffle feathers, so people cause a panic.
That's spectacularly Gotham City.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's damn fine pull.
Thanks.
Well, Alexandra, thanks for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure talking to Riddler with you.
It's super
You've done a
fun.
fantastic job.
Oh, golly gee, guys.
And in
Thank
fact,
you.
you did such a good job that we'd like to ask you a question. We have a riddle for you.
Oh, what is it?
Riddle me this. When will you be available to record another episode?
Yeah, I'm free anytime. Just have me back, guys, because this is really fun. I don't get to talk
we've got
Batman
one or two in
with-
mind.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So expect Alexandra to come back for at least another episode or
So
two.
what do you
Golly.
think? What do you think about these Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy characters?
I only just love them quite a lot because it's just so gratifying to see ladies in this universe.
Ooh, so we have just the episode for you.
Oh, golly.
So Alexandra, would you like to join us for a discussion about Harley and Ivy later this season?
Yeah, let's do it, guys. I'm totally game for that.
Then that's what's going to happen, people.
Sweet.
Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Alexandra Bohannon will be back for season 2, episode 28, Harley and Ivy. Super excited to talk about that one.
Well, that about wraps it up for this animated discussion. Caleb, where can people go to continue the conversation with you?
Well, I'm the editor-in-chief over at thecinematropolis.com. It's a website dedicated to really deep dive analysis of films, kind of like in the same way we're breaking down each episode of B-Tast. We do this with all sorts of movies. So if you like the sort of thing we're doing here, I hope you'll head on over to thecinematropolis.com. And of course, where you can read essays from myself, a lot of contributors, including Joshua Unruh here, who has written some great superhero pieces. And also, we've gotten Smoking the Bandit, some old films too, some great A essays there. You can also find me on Twitter tweeting about movies and TV and video games and all sorts of other pop culture on Twitter at C Masters Talk. Again, that's letter C Masters Talk. Joshua, how about you?
I'm also most active on Twitter, where you can find me easily enough as at Joshua Unruh. I'm happy to field any superhero questions you might have, and who knows, it might even become a podcast unto itself. I'll also keep you in the loop on any fiction, articles, podcasts, or diatribes that I cast out into the world, including my work at the Cinematropolis and for Pulp Diction Productions and Press. Until next time, we'll see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Animated Discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions. And if you can't support us financially, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It's the best way to help others discover the show. Keep up with Pulp Diction news by following @Joshua Unruh on Twitter or find us at facebook.com/pulpdictionproductions. And a special thanks to Vinnie Hogan for our original theme music.